A year on from the devastating collapse of Lehman Brothers, as we've just heard, there are some signs that life is returning to the global and Australian economy. So what does this mean for employers when it comes to retaining staff? Are the days of skill shortages looming on the horizon, even as unemployment rises? Well, to give us her unique perspective, Lenore Lambert from Exit Info joins us in the studio. And as the name implies, Exit Info is a firm that specializes in conducting exit interviews. Lenore, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon, evening I should say.
You're welcome.
Day flies by. Exit interviews, it's a pretty interesting way to gather information, to find out why people are leaving organizations. And your latest study reveals some pretty surprising results, especially in light of the global financial crisis.
It does, yes. Sometimes in research, the interesting results are when you find no result. And in one sense, we found one of those, which was that the core reasons for leaving, the real drivers of turnover, haven't changed a whole lot, sort of pre-GFC and post-GFC. So the core things that we've known have driven quit behaviour are still driving quit behaviour.
One of the interesting things that you found was that 67% of staff still feel that it's relatively easy to find a new job, and that's even considering the GFC and in light of rising unemployment. Why do you think this is?
Because I think when we think about the big picture, it was only 12 months ago, which is not that long ago really, where employers were scrambling for staff. One of our clients, it would be just over 12 months ago, was having to go to Indonesia to fill entry-level positions in their business. So it's very fresh in people's memory, this idea that the demand for labour outstrips supply. And most of us know that the days of that are not over. They're only going to get worse. This is a bit of a blip in that trend, but you know, the days of employees market will return.
Okay, so just so that we can all be on the same page, it must be said that the people who you're really speaking with who are leaving these positions are actually sort of top performers in companies. So who are we speaking about?
Well, we interview all sorts of performers. We separated out the top performers to have a look at whether the top performers differed in any way to anyone else. And what we found was interesting with the top performers specifically was that more employers are making an effort to keep top performers post-GFC or post the onset of the worst of the GFC than were making an effort prior to that, which was that was a really interesting result. And I think that reflects employers realising, it's really hard to find good people, and I think it also reflects that they do expect the economy to rebound and they don't want to have to go through that drama of finding good people again. It's very, very expensive to lose staff and replace them, and you've always got a risk. Recruitment is an imperfect science, and we don't always get it right. And so when we do get it right and we get really good employees who some research shows that top performers can outperform average employers by a factor of 12. So employers are realising, these are people they don't want to have to go searching for again in 12 months or 2 years' time, because it's only not even 10 years ago that we saw the last dip in the economy, and it recovered very quickly.
Okay, so one of the other things that your study found, which I thought was really interesting, is that it's actually a perceived lack of job security that's making some of these employees want to leave and go look elsewhere. That seems sort of counterintuitive. Can you explain that?
It was a really interesting result. That result was not an across-the-board finding. There were a couple of companies where we found that happening, and it was only for top performers. And it was a case, these are voluntary resignations, so they're people who've decided, they've looked around and they've decided that they don't feel in control of their careers, that it's not feeling terribly secure. And top performers generally can be in control of their careers. I mean, most people can, but they especially can. So I think they look around and decide, I'm not feeling that I can control my career here because, there are redundancies happening around me or whatever it might be. So I'm going to take charge and take my career elsewhere.
Interesting. Another interesting thing I found it all pretty interesting, to be honest, was that people opting to leave the workplace voluntarily, either temporarily or permanently, is up post-global financial crisis, or in the wake, I should say, of the global financial crisis. Now, you're getting this information through exit interviews. So are people telling the truth? What do you think an entrance interview would reveal?
Well, we actually do what we call stay interviews as well with people who've just passed their probation period, but we collect some different information in those. We are pretty confident that we get the truth from people, and a couple of reasons that we have for that are part of our process is that the departer, we call the departing employee departer, when they leave, they are given complete control over who sees the results of their personal feedback about the organisation. So if they're anxious enough about showing anyone, they can actually say, I don't want anyone to see it. And if that's the case, nobody will see it. And the reason that we're pretty confident that we're getting honest feedback from people is that we have a number of clients who, before they used our service, their exit data showed that there was no incidents of bullying, harassment or unfair discrimination. And then shortly after starting to use our service, they discovered in fact there was, and that was part of the reason some people were leaving their organisation. And anyone who's had any sort of HR experience would know that those topics are probably the most anxiety-producing topics that an employee would ever think about giving feedback on. Some brave souls are open about it, but it's a really scary thing to be open about. So the fact that we actually get that kind of feedback from people to us says that we get a pretty honest view when people leave.
Okay. Now, some people who are considering leaving their jobs are actually spending a lot more time now mulling that over. So the number of months or weeks that they're actually spending thinking about leaving is growing. So what can employers then do in that period to sort of bring them back if these are people who they really don't want to lose?
The key really is staying close to your staff, and especially true of your top performers. But it's interesting, the keys to keeping people are not the fancy, expensive initiatives that we often hear about, especially in the HR press. The organisations that I know of who are doing a really good job of this, and among them are some of our clients, are the ones who actually take a more organic approach and who actually just have conversations with people, where managers are having those discussions with staff about, are they challenged, are they growing, are they happy, and are opening safe two-way lines of communication. It's interesting, we gather a lot of feedback on the direct manager from the person who's leaving, and it's amazing how consistent. There's this one little item in there that sticks out almost every time as rated very poorly, and that item is, my manager discusses my career progress with me frequently enough. And you don't need big multi-million-dollar programs to do that. All you need is managers willing and equipped to have that conversation with their people, so that it's really interesting. We ask departers, could the organisation have convinced you to stay prior to resigning? And then we ask them, after you resigned, was there anything the organisation could have done to get you to stay? And a really large portion of people, it varies organisation by organisation, but we're talking 30 to 60% of departers will say, yes, there's something, they could have turned me around before I resigned. That percentage diminishes greatly after I resigned. So the takeaway from that for employers in terms of keeping people is have the conversations. Be alert to the signs that people are getting bored in their jobs. There are 4 drivers of turnover which just seem to, across the board, with some very limited exceptions, be the really big drivers of staff turnover. And all of them are affected greatly by the direct manager. There's a saying in the leadership development field that anything to do with organisational effectiveness, change the leaders or change the leaders. And our data really actually reinforces that idea. So the big 4, if you like, drivers of staff turnover are lack of interest in or enjoyment of the job itself, so the nature of work that I'm doing. So give me a job that I actually find interesting and enjoyable to do. Managers are in charge of who does what job. Lack of challenge or stretch in the job. Again, who controls how much challenge I'm given, what kind of tasks I'm given, how much autonomy I'm given? The manager does. We've got lack of challenge or stretch. We've got the direct manager themselves. So about 1 in 5 resignations list the direct manager as a reason for leaving. And the 4th of the top 4 are lack of appropriate opportunities for career advancement. And that doesn't necessarily mean promotion. because again, you'll find it varies a bit, but anywhere between 30 and 60% of people who leave citing lack of career advancement go to a job at the same level or at a more junior level. So it's about development. It's about, am I adding to my kit bag of competence by spending my career time here with you as an employer? And the manager is the single biggest influence on all 4 of those drivers of turnover.
All right, Lenoria Lambert, we'll have to leave that there. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome.